Meet the Press has been around since 1947. It is the longest running show on all of television, a who's who of politics. And NBC takes that legacy very seriously, which is why what's happening right now is kind of baffling. The network is replacing David Gregory with Chuck Todd after months of nasty stories about Gregory in the press. No surprise, of course, a show about Beltway politics is fraught with backstage politics. Here's the thing about it. Gregory followed the most famous moderator in Meet the Press history, Tim Russert. He sat in the chair for 16 years. With Russert, the show was pretty reliably #1 in the ratings. But Russert died in 2008. Gregory took over, and Meet the Press is now #3. So NBC can point to the ratings as the reason for making the change, but it's been done in an ugly way. Gregory isn't just leaving the show, he's leaving the network without even saying goodbye on air. So to discuss this and the future of Sunday morning public affairs programs, let me bring in Frank Sesno, the director of the GW University School of Media and Public Affairs and a former Washington bureau chief here at CNN, and Jay Rosen, a journalism professor at New York University. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Frank, what do you make of the way this has happened? We've been talking for months about whether Gregory was going to keep his job, and now all of a sudden he's leaving the network.
It's ugly. It's the dark underside of television. It's the guillotine brought into broadcasting, and it's a bad way for Gregory to have to leave. The fact of the matter is that by any measure in the television world, his tenure was not a success. The ratings sank. Was it his fault? Hard to say. Is it that X factor that producers sometimes like to talk about, that mysterious chemistry between host and audience? Maybe. But this is, as you say, the backstage politics of the program about
Are you a believer that the format itself is still alive and well?
Yes.
Is there a point to these Sunday morning political talk shows?
Absolutely. A vital point to it. People are fascinated by people. People are fascinated by politics. This is a niche program. It always has been. It fills a vital role for the networks to plant their flag in the public affairs domain. People in public life go to these shows to set an agenda, to take on a debate, to handle a controversy. It should be the place where that's wrung out of them, and it can be and should be riveting for people who are interested in it.
Jay, I know you disagree. I know you think these shows are broken. Tell me why.
Well, I think they're still important, but they're broken for a number of different reasons. One of the most important ones is that as the partisan divide has gotten worse, partisan argument concerns not only policy and politics, but facts themselves. Often there is no common set of facts on which the players can disagree. And one of Gregory's problems is that he was unable to adjust to that. I think these shows are an important instrument of accountability, but they've drifted out of touch with the audience. The people who are interested in politics now have a lot more information available to them. They also expect more interaction with their journalists than they did in the past. And that's not something that David Gregory was very good at. I also think, Brian, that he showed a very strange, sort of almost fatal lack of self-awareness in that he was unable to make sense of any of the criticism of him. He was also, in a large way, unable to persuade the audience that he was on their side when he interviewed politicians. And I think that's one of the reasons that he had such low ratings, and also a lot of hostility coming at him and very few fans.
I think that what you just said, Jay, is absolutely right in terms of the changed nature of the show, but that's a format issue. That's not a program issue. So journalism needs to be, media needs to be more of a conversation with the audience. I think you're absolutely right. The host needs to be the surrogate for the audience, but also listening to and connected with the audience. This business about facts and that, Washington is so messed up and so broken, that actually argues for why these programs should be more relevant, a place to hold people's feet to the fire even better and closer and hotter, which is why the role of the host is so important, and I think where Chuck is going to excel.
I think one of the big problems with these shows, and Meet the Press in particular, is that Meet the Press kind of became greet the talking points. And I don't think David Gregory ever realized that problem. He certainly didn't have the wit to solve it. And if you're #1 in a declining format, you're okay. If you're #3 in a declining format, you're not.
This is why the host has to stay. Hang on a second, you know, Senator Windbag. Before you go any farther with that, we've heard that 100 times before. We've done our research, and here's why that doesn't work. Or here's what you said 6 weeks ago. Or here's the problem with your proposal. Tim Russert was very, very good with that. I've done Sunday talk shows. I did it with this network for 7 years. You know that what you're getting is guests coming in to set the agenda. That means, by definition, they're coming in to present their talking points.
Isn't this partly, Frank, about insider versus outsider journalism? Yeah. If you're producing Meet the Press to appeal to the so-called Gang of 500 that care and dictate politics in this city, then you're going to get a very different show than would be one for outsiders.
That's right. And sometimes what the danger with these shows is that you're trying to make news. And in trying to make news, it's that little incremental nothingness, really, that's going to maybe drive a headline, but is not of interest to people outside the Beltway. People around the country, around the world, and exactly what Jay is saying, what they want to hear and should hear on a Sunday morning is, wait a minute, where do you get all that? How do you propose to make that work? It's not, and it mustn't be, a talking points show. Otherwise, it should be called, you know, Meet the Talking Points.
Right, right. Chuck,
but Brian, there's a difference between the 500 or 1,000 people in Washington who are the movers and shakers and the smaller segment of the big audience that is interested in politics.
Well,
those are two different things. And Meet the Press, and as well as the other Sunday shows, sometimes seem to be about those 500 people, not the hardcore audience for politics which exists around the country.
Well, Chuck Todd will start on Meet the Press on September 7th. Jay, are you optimistic that he can improve what you see as the flaws on the program?
Well, Chuck Todd is much better at social media. He's much more interactive. He's much more tuned in to that larger class of people who are interested in politics that I talked about. On the other hand, he's completely a creature of the game, and he loves the inside game. And I think the problem with these shows is they are too wound up in that inside game, so it's going to be a challenge for Chuck to adjust to that. I think one more thing we should add here is that there is a very strong sense in the country that Washington is broken. The political class has failed. We can't even get on the same page about what the problem is, let alone solve the problem. And I think it would be wise for Chuck Todd to see himself and his colleagues, Washington journalists, as part of the class that has screwed up politics. And maybe in taking over Meet the Press, he can begin to address some of how that happened.
What an interesting thought for us to end it on. Jay Rosen and Frank Sesno, thank you both for joining me.
Thank you.